President Trump hosted a meeting with video game makers and their critics at the White House today. He was busy. They're looking for ways to reduce youth violence following the Florida school shooting. And the president recently expressed shock at what young people are exposed to today.
The video games, the movies, the internet stuff is so violent. It's so incredible. I see it. I get to see things that you'd be amazed at. I have a very young son who I look at some of the things he's watching and I say, how is that possible? And this is what kids are watching.
Now let's discuss whether there is any link between violence on the screen and real violence with Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, who's authored books on the psychology of violence, Army Ranger, black belt, and everything. Okay, you win just on that score. It's great to have you both on. Let's start with you, David, because some of these games are really wild. I mean, they're pretty graphic, pretty gory. You know them, Call of Duty. I don't do any of these, but
like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, they're simulated violence.
It's a criminal simulator, murder simulator.
Yeah, Evan Ramsey, others like some of these other killers, Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris of Columbine, were steeped in these games. Adam Lanza.
The Norway killer trained on those. He said he trained on them. 69 dead on island in Norway, and he spent a year training on video games to prepare himself for crime. The killer in Florida, he spent 15 hours a day on violent video games. The most all-consuming, all-pervasive thing in this guy's life are these violent video games. And less than a year ago, the American Psychological Association made a definitive statement. There is a clear, unequivocal link between violent video games, violent behavior. The blood pressure goes up, their heart rate goes up, violent actions go up. The data is persistent and clear across many different forms. You cannot deny it. It is overwhelming.
Ben Shapiro, I know you're skeptical about a link from video games. Yes. Millions and millions of people play these video games. I mean, girls aren't as into these video games, I'm sorry, as boys are, but I think if my sons had access to them, I'm sure they'd play them all the time, because something about the boy's brain and these games. But why are you not worried about it?
Well, I mean, I'm not supremely worried about it just because the consumption of these violent video games has been going up continuously since the early 90s, and yet youth violence has been going down since the early 90s. The correlation actually doesn't fit. As far as individual instances, I mean, you can find patterns in very sporadic instances among virtually all data sets, but there's some pretty mixed data about this. It's true that the American Psychological Association recommends that parents not allow their kids to play these games. I wouldn't let my kids play these games because I think they're immoral, frankly, but that should really be up to parents. I'm not sure the government should be in the business of stepping in. In 2011, Justice Scalia, in a majority decision 5-4, found that it was actually unconstitutional for the state of California to regulate the capacity of parents to be able to get these video games for their kids, or even for kids to get them themselves without parental permission. He saw that as a content violation under the First Amendment.
Let's talk more about this. The assassinations that take place in the games.
You know, my book, Laura, Assassination Generation, we outlined the dissenting opinions in that case. There's much more to this situation that we need to understand. You know, Clarence Thomas and Stephen Breyer, most liberal, most conservative justice, dissented. Stephen Breyer said they use these to train military. I'm not a medical expert, but I know who is, and it's not the people the video game industry put out. You need to know more about their case. The data is so overwhelming. And when I was a kid, nobody buckled their seatbelt.